It's time for leadership and laughs with Pete and Brian.
That's Brian on the electric guitar there.
And now here are your hosts, Pete like a Brian Fergie.
I love it.
Every time Pete Blank and Brian Vaghi.
Brian Vaghi.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Glad to have you joining us for Leadership and Laughs with Pete and Brian, episode number 2. Brian, how do you think episode number 1 did?
Episode number 1 was a lot of fun. We had a good time. We actually had our first overseas caller, Pete, from Kurdistan over near Iraq. And that was Savannah. It was interesting. It was fun.
It's a huge win for us. We can't get anybody to call like our next door neighbors, but someone can call from Iraq. So thanks to all our next door neighbors for taking the time to listen. So we appreciate we appreciate that. A couple of things, Brian, before we get started today. For those of you who have just tuned in today for the first time, there should be a chat box on your Podbean app. The more that you type little things in there like "ooh" or "wow" or "neat point" or "you're stupid" or anything like that, we get little points for that. And then the more engagement points we get, the higher this podcast goes in Podbean and more people can find it. So throughout the day, if you want to type anything into the chat box like "ooh," "wow," "neat point," "excellent job," feel free to do that. Also, people are actually typing "ooh," "wow," "neat point."
Good job, Kate. Thank you.
Thank you for doing that. We want to make this as interactive as possible, so we do have live call-ins. The point that Brian and I do this is so we can talk to you live. Now, if you don't want us to use your name, because maybe you're like, I don't want to make this point on, we'll just do initials. So we'll just call you up by your first initial, and kind of that way you can say whatever you want without worrying about if your boss or leader is saying anything. Because, Brian, these views are our views. These are not the views of our
respective
employer.
Organizations or our employers or anybody else.
Yes. I got a comment. Am I outside? No, that's just the way that we sound. We're trying to work out the audio because we're trying to make it as crisp as possible, but sometimes it sounds a little echoey. So, but thank you. No, we are not outside. I'd love to be outside today, but we are not outside. What Brian and I want to do is we want this to be the most enjoyable part of your week. I don't know if some of you have been furloughed, some of you have been laid off, some of you are still working from home, maybe you're working remotely. And our goal is for you to say, man, maybe everything's not so great right now, but you know what's coming? Wednesday morning at 9 Eastern, 8 Central, 7 Mountain, 6 Pacific. Pete and Brian will fill us with joy for 1 hour a week.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. I mean, it's fun for us. You can talk, you can engage, you can have us on the background while you're working, or have us in the back while you're commuting or working out or whatever you want to go.
That's a good point, Pete. You know, this podcast isn't our day job.
No.
Pete and I are each involved in leadership and learning and development and things in our own organizations. But, you know, leadership is a passion of ours. It's always been. And if it's a passion of yours, or, you know, maybe you want to tune in, Pete, and just have some chuckles.
Right. Yes. Some chortles, perhaps, and
some guffaws.
Some tee-hees, hopefully, on Leadership and Laughs today. All right. So, Brian, we want to thank all of our people for coming online. We got about 8 or 9. So tell all your friends to come online and listen. And we're going to begin with our first segment, which I call Leading Off with Brian. So let's get his theme music going here. He's coming all the way from Denver, Colorado. He's got some interesting news stories to share with us and make us go, wow, that sounds like a leadership lesson. Here he is, leading off, my buddy, your buddy, Brian Vaghi.
All right, thanks, Pete. We're going to be leading off with something that's on everyone's radar these days. Sorry, I should have let my theme music keep going. This is only episode number 2, folks.
You're good.
Something that it's on everybody's radar these days, and that is, of course, toilet paper.
You can't have leadership without toilet paper, my friend.
So, we all know that, everywhere you go, all the stores are sold out of toilet paper, and that's not just happening here in the United States, but that's happening all over the world. There have been shortages in Hong Kong and Australia and the United Kingdom, and of course, right here at home in the United States. And we all know who to blame, right, Pete?
I think Carol Baskin from the
Oh,
Carol
that was
Baskin. Thank you.
excellent, excellent. No, we're blaming people who are being labeled as hoarders or panic buyers.
Yes.
But, story after story has been coming out explaining that the toilet paper shortages are sort of a fluke of consumer panic and irrationality, right?
Sure, absolutely.
But the truth is, unlike hand sanitizer, surgical masks, ventilators, etc., toilet paper doesn't seem to serve a special function during a pandemic like we're experiencing here.
Right.
And you would assume that toilet paper manufacturers are still producing the same amount of toilet paper they've always produced, and it's not like people are using the bathroom more often. Right?
Correct. Yeah, we're all trying to figure out why in the world there's a run on toilet paper. It's kind of like you say, I get hand sanitizer and I get, masks. I don't get toilet paper. I'm hoping you have an answer.
Well, I don't, but this article I read does.
Okay.
And basically, it said that the toilet paper industry is basically split into two separate markets. And this is just something interesting to think about. There's your commercial market and then your consumer market. So, this pandemic has kind of shifted most of the demand to the consumer market.
Right.
So people actually do need to buy significantly more toilet paper these days, not because they're hoarding it necessarily, and not because they're making more trips to the bathroom, but because they're doing that at home. So
that's an interesting thought.
75% of our population are under stay-at-home orders, and we're just no longer using the bathroom at work or in our schools or restaurants, in hotels, etc.
I've got to be honest, you just blew my mind because we don't really prep about this in advance. That's how professional we are. We just kind of get on and go with it. But I hadn't thought about that. At first I think that there was a sense of hoarding, but now your point is valid. If I'm not using the restroom in my office building, I'm still using the restroom the same amount of times, but it's in my home. So by definition, I do need more toilet paper. There's a huge leadership challenge right now around this whole idea of supply chain. I know that Kate talked about the whole supply chain issue. We've got restaurants where we are, Brian, where they're struggling trying to figure out how to actually keep themselves afloat. And there's a local restaurant here in town that has started selling all of their excess food that they have, and they throw in rolls of toilet paper. Because like you said, the commercial businesses probably still have it because they've got it on order and it's sitting in shelves in their stockroom and supply room.
Right, and they've had a huge leap in demand for a product like, Kate said, whose supply chain is basically, it's based on the assumption that that demand is going to be consistent. But Georgia Pacific, who is the one of the leading toilet paper manufacturers, they're actually based out of Atlanta, Georgia. They estimate that the average American household is using 40% more toilet paper than usual, with everybody staying at home around the clock.
And imagine if you have 3 daughters. Oh, hold on a second. Wait a second. Imagine if you have 3 daughters.
Well done.
Thank you, sir. All right, excellent. So toilet paper is leading off number 1. Let's get to what's leading off story number 2, my friend. Bring it on.
That's not me on guitar, by the way.
You're very talented.
I appreciate that.
All right, go
So
ahead.
Pete, with our summer travel plans are in jeopardy. I assume that yours are as well.
I am supposed to be taking a graduation trip for my high school senior and my college senior to the beautiful Alani Resort at Disney's Vacation Club in Hawaii. That trip is scheduled through or coming up on May 23rd, Brian. Can you give me? We should use that as one of our over-unders. What's the over-under chance that Pete will actually be going to Hawaii to celebrate on May 23rd?
Exactly. Well, yeah. it's certainly, and that window is closing. It's not closed, but with those travel plans being in kind of danger as this crisis drags on.
Correct.
Major U.S. airlines, Pete, are allowing travelers to change or cancel their tickets without paying a hefty change fee.
I like that.
Yeah. So, if you're a traveler who booked, say, a summer flight from New York to LA or to Europe, maybe last fall, you'll be able to change your flight to another date or cancel your trip and receive an electronic travel credit. And that's all without paying ticket change fees that usually start at around $200 a person.
Brian, can you imagine the boardrooms right now in the airline industry where they're sitting around and you've got so many people canceling their flights and saying, I can't go, or maybe the airlines are canceling flights and saying we're not having it, and then having the chief financial officers in that room with the customer service, chief operating officers going, we've got to allow the refunds. We've got to allow the change fees to not be put together. And the chief financial officer going, you realize that if we don't, if we waive all of these fees, that's going to be X billions or millions of dollars. That's got to be the talk around the boardrooms. But putting the customer first and saying that either get a voucher or a waiver, I think it's the right thing to do.
I agree. And, for certainly from a PR standpoint, they came out with a statement. Let me see if I can find it here. It says, many customers' previous plans for travel, including summer vacations, conferences, and events, have changed or are uncertain due to the COVID-19 outbreak. So to help with the uncertainty around their future travel, customers who wish to change their dates of travel can do so without paying a change fee.
There's so much flexibility that has to happen these days. So I applaud, and I know they're going to struggle with this. I know that certain airlines are going to struggle and say, well, you don't get a refund. You instead get a voucher, and it expires this. And this is going to have long lasting. We're going to talk about courtesy later today, Brian, in our Daily Disney. Where does courtesy come before the financial viability of your this is tough. This is tough. Terry says it's the right thing to do. I totally agree, Terry. I just hope that it's the right thing to do and they still don't end up going under because there's no money.
That's why they're trying to protect the customers, because a famous man once said, without customers, you have no business being in business.
Oh, that's good stuff. Put that on a college program, Vista Way, room 2605 wall. Story number 3 in leading off. All right, you got one more for us?
I got one more.
Before we get into that, John Freeze brings up, aren't the companies getting stimulus money? That's a good point, John. I think some of the companies are getting some of the stimulus money, but the more and more stories that I read are the struggles in what can the money be used for? Does it have to be allocated to employees? Does it have to be allocated to the customers? So there's so much gray area right now. Yeah, I agree with you with both Brian and Terry and John. Let's err on the side of the customer, because the customer is going to be around, and we will remember. We as the customer will remember if you shafted me $60 on a change fee, and I'll fly somebody else. So good point. Good point. All right, go ahead, Brian. What's story number 3?
All right, story number 3. Pete, have you heard of Zoom?
Yes, I use Zoom on a daily basis. I'm a Zoomer.
Yeah, it's emerged recently during this COVID-19 pandemic crisis outbreak. What's another synonym for what's going on?
Pandemic, catastrophe, you name it. We'll create an adjective for it.
So, Zoom has appeared on the scene here as one of the leading tools that has been able to keep businesses up and running, and students across the country doing online learning, and we use it for virtual happy hours sometimes, where we'll get together with friends on Zoom. It's really become a social media phenomenon. It seems almost overnight, right?
Right, because again, I think for a while, GoToMeeting and GoToWebinar, WebEx had almost the market covered on this type of technology. I've been using Zoom for a couple years, and not a lot of people who are outside of the business world or entrepreneurship knew about it. So once this thing started, Brian, and everybody's like, "Oh, this is a free web hosting thing where I can see people and free and talk to me," it just exploded. It exploded.
Yeah. So, sorry, I got a I got a text that my mic is popping, and once again we apologize for that.
We're working on it.
It's a work in progress. But back
You
to
sound
Zoom.
you sound handsome to me.
I appreciate that. But it, to your point, it's recently ranked number one among all the free apps on Apple's App Store. It's ahead of Google or WhatsApp or, one of my kids' favorites is TikTok.
Nope, stay away from that. Nope, TikTok. Nope.
TikTok.
TikTok is going to get all into your business. So go ahead. All right. So anyhow, sorry.
So anyway, one thing that Zoom didn't account for with their new heights of popularity is that they've experienced kind of a wave of growing pains and concerns around cybersecurity that have really kind of shifted the conversation around its video tools pretty drastically. So some schools have been reporting that they're hesitant to use Zoom with their students because of instances that they're calling Zoom bombing. Have you heard of Zoom bombing?
Yes, Zoom bombing means that I can, as a hacker, get in and either put pictures of myself, put maybe some pornographic pictures up, maybe write some racist words, so that during your classroom setting and your leadership team meeting, you get a nice dose of funness all over your background. Yes, so that's right, Brian. That's a problem.
That's a problem, but you know what? They did the right thing. They met the problem head on. Zoom's CEO Eric Yuan just recently apologized and promised to freeze development of, new meeting features, to set up weekly public security focused town halls and devote their engineers' focus to privacy and security for the next 3 months. The Eric Yuan, he took personal responsibility for what's gone wrong. And here's what he said. He said, "We take this very seriously. I really want to build something that makes the world a better place." And he told his employees, and here's the leadership part of it. He says, "We need to work 10 times harder than ever before to win that trust back."
That's a great point. That's a great point. And Brian, you're right on the leadership lesson on this. There are many CEOs, leaders who would come out and say, "Well, what do you expect? It's emerging technology. Well, what do you expect? We're just getting deep into this. You should be happy with all the features." He's coming out and saying, "We're stopping all the feature productions and putting all of our people, if you will, onto security. We hear you. We understand. We dropped the ball. Our bad. Let's do everything we can to sort of fix this." And that's the leadership lesson, Brian, is we've got to be able to change lanes. John Free says he owns it. It builds content. Yeah. I feel better, John, knowing that the CEO of Zoom has said, "We know that you're, dropping the ball. We know we made a mistake. We're going to do everything we can to fix it."
Right.
You think that's a good lesson, Brian?
I think it's a good lesson. But enough of that. Enough of leading off. It's time for our next segment, Pete, which is called "They Did What?"
Oh, my word. It's time where Brian and Pete take a look at the most idiotic leadership decisions that are made in management. We stand back and look and say,
"They did what?"
What? All right. So I want y'all to call in during this if you want to. Normally we've done one show. Normally, we do 3 articles on They Did What. Today I've got one, and it happened just this week. It's Amazon. So as we're listening, after I explain all the basics here, I'm going to take your calls. If you want to take an opinion on one side or the other, we currently invite you to hit the call button and let us know your thoughts. If you decide that you want to be wishy-washy like myself and stay in the middle, you can go with the world-fashioned "it depends." Well, Brian, it depends. So in case you didn't hear the story, this is from April 13th. Amazon has fired. Brian, do you use Amazon? Have you heard of this little company called Amazon?
It's a river.
It's a river, and you, my friend, are in denial.
I tee him up, you hit him.
Thank you, sir. Amazon has fired 2 employees who were outspoken critics of its climate policies and who had publicly denounced the conditions at its warehouses as unsafe during the coronavirus. So let me give you the employees' point of view first, if I may. We'll start with the employees. One of the fired workers, her name is Emily. She was a user experience designer, and she's part of the group Amazon Employees for Climate Justice. Now, we don't know, at Disney, we used to have things that were called, what were they called? Employee resource groups,
Right.
where they were sanctioned by the company, but people could get together and do that. I'm not sure if this Amazon Employees for Climate Justice is a sanctioned group by Amazon. Oh, sure, you all can meet and do this, or if they just made a subgroup outside and had people involved. So she was part of this group, and she went on Twitter. We talked about social media last week, Brian. She went on Twitter and said, hey, if anybody donates up to $500 for our Amazon warehouse workers, I will match it, because there is a lack of safe and sanitary working conditions, and Amazon is putting the public at risk. Now, keep in mind, she works for Amazon. She was fired last Friday. Now, her friend, we'll call her Marin, is a principal user experience designer who's also part of the employee climate group. And she was also fired Friday because she retweeted everything that Cunningham, I said her last name. Oh, well, it's in the news.
Oh.
Cunningham tweeted.
We'll
call her Emily Cunningham. So because of how effective we've been in getting Amazon to take leadership in the climate crisis, they've wanted me gone for a while, she says. And Costa believes she was fired for her outspokenness as well. They were targeting the most visible leaders in an attempt to silence everyone, she says. So, oh my word, so you just go out, the organization is doing unsafe practices, and you say to yourself, I need to let the world know that we need better working conditions. Sounds like a good plan to me. What's Amazon's point of view? Would you like to hear it, Brian?
I would love to hear what Amazon says about this.
All right, here's what Amazon says.
I can
Amazon
predict
says that these 2 workers repeatedly violated the internal policy. All right. Amazon says, quote, we support every employee's right to criticize their employer's working conditions, but that does not come with blanket immunity against any and all internal policies. Amazon's external communications policy prohibits employees from commenting publicly on its business without corporate justification or approval from executives. So Amazon said that the dismissal was for multiple reasons, including someone ignoring a request from his manager to stay home after contacting with a worker who tested positive for the coronavirus. So here's the summary. Cunningham has been a vocal critic of Amazon's climate. Now, remember, she worked for Amazon. She's been a vocal critic of their climate policies, criticizing them at the company's shareholders meeting last May.
She did what?
She did what? And she also condemned Amazon's work with oil and gas companies on social media and in news reports. Last year, Amazon warned her, who also denounced, and again, Amazon denounces, who also, last year, Amazon warned the other person, Costa, that she risked being fired for speaking about Amazon's business in a public forum. Now, some of the things that they're also complaining about, Brian, is that they have policies that push them. And you can imagine working in an Amazon warehouse right now. The policies push them to meet the per hour rate at which the company wants orders fulfilled. They have some practices that discourage safe sanitary practices, such as washing their hands after coughing or sneezing. And workers now have to stand shoulder to shoulder during each shift and are not 6 feet apart. So phone lines are open. Let me hear, is Amazon right to fire these 2 employees, or are these 2 employees correct to speak up and say, hold on, there's a pandemic going on. We're having to stand side by side. There's bad things happening. If you have an opinion, you can type it in the chat box, or you can call us. We'd love to have you on the air right now and let you. And again, there's no right or wrong answer to this. Let's be very clear. I'm not defending you. Brian and I were talking last night. We can say, well, I kind of agree with both sides. If you feel like your company is doing some things that are unsafe, that are unhealthy, that you may believe to be illegal or unethical, by all means, you should speak up. However, if you're an organization, do you have the right to tell your employees, hey, be careful about what you say about us. We are paying your salary. Of course you do. So what do you do? Who did what wrong? Who did what, Brian? Was it the employee or was it the supervisors. And as you can tell, the phone lines are blowing up because no one wants to touch this with a 10-foot pole, baby. Will someone press the call-in button and come on. I'm getting a nope. Yeah, because Amazon's listening to your Alexa at home, so you don't want to say anything. Anything was bad. One person is listening who said that the employees were wrong. All right, some people do believe that the employees were wrong. Brian, what's your take while we're waiting for anybody to step up and share?
I'm not sure that the employees were wrong as much as just, not really a great decision. You have to understand in your company, what the policies are and what the ramifications are going to be. Maybe they did. Maybe they understood what the ramifications were going to be, and they felt so strongly about it that they did it anyway.
Let's put it in terms that you and I can understand. We both worked at Disney. Can you imagine if we went in front of Team Disney, the corporate headquarters, put a little box up with a microphone and stood up there and said, I love this company, but I hate that we're outsourcing all of our manufacturing to China. How dare, just to save a buck, we're doing that. We should build things. And why are we doing this? All the air for, what do you think would have happened to us?
Well, Disney security would show up and we would be introduced to our vehicles and asked to leave. But
yes.
There were times, Pete, where we disagreed, of course, with corporate decisions. At
Absolutely.
Anywhere else we've been, but there's a time and a place, I think, for that and for voicing those concerns, and maybe doing it in a public forum isn't the time and the place to do that.
Now, of course, the U.S. government loves to get involved with this. So, Senator Bernie Sanders tweeted his support of the workers and said, thank you for courageously speaking out. And thank you for telling Jeff Bezos to end all of this hypocrisy. And in fact, there were some other senators who came out. There was a gentleman that was fired from New York, from an Amazon location in New York. And there were a lot of senators who got involved and said that he should get his job back. Amazon fired Chris Smalls after he raised concerns to social media outlets about working conditions. And 5 U.S. senators, including Cory Booker, Kristen Gillibrand, sent Bezos a letter saying that you really shouldn't fire them. So you've got American politicians saying, good for you, speak up, that's the way, things don't change without that. But then you've got corporate America saying, you can say what you want to say, but just be careful, there may be some different things. Brian, can you see some of those responses coming in on the chat?
I can, yes. So, we have people who are saying that the employees were wrong, or specifically that they should address the issue in a different way.
That's the key, isn't it? I'm allowed to bring my ideas up. And then I think at some point, Brian, this is my opinion, at some point you have to decide whether to stay there or not. So if I'm against the climate policies on Amazon, if I'm against the way that Disney does something or the way that Ritz-Carlton or Southwest, I need to bring that up in the forum. That's been decided. And if the company says, we hear you, we understand, but we're not going to do anything about it, that's too bad, then you have to make a decision at that time of what you're going to do. Are you going to stay with that organization and just ride it out? Or are you going to kind of bail out? So
at some point, if you feel so strongly about it, then maybe you don't need to work there.
Right. Absolutely. Someone says that there's policies in place and they repeatedly violated them, then Amazon has a right to terminate. Right. Thank you so much, T. There's 2 sides to every story. I doubt this was their first encounter. I'm sure, I would like to think that they've been coached by leadership ahead of time and said, hey, if you keep doing this, this might happen. So that concludes They Did What. Thank you. Let's get into some fun stuff, Brian. How about a game show? I mean, can we please get? And by the way, so we've got one person also saying Amazon's a terrible company to work for. Luckily, we're moving on, standing tall. Getting out of that before you get there. Brian, what do you got for us?
All right, it's time for everyone's favorite leadership statistics game show, Over Under.
Over Under.
Over Under.
How many
All right.
people are going to be listening to our show? The over-under is set at 30, Brian. You taking
And
the over or the under?
I'm taking the over, Pete. How many people are listening to the show?
We got 20 people right now. We want to thank thank you, Tradville. Under. There's no way people are listening to this. Right now we've got 9. We got 20 people. Yeah, Carp. We started at 9 Eastern. Yeah. So very good. All right, here we go. Let's get out of here.
All right. So, Pete, here's how this game works. I'm going to present you with a few interesting and hopefully timely leadership statistics, and you're going to have to decide if the actual number is over or under the number that I give you.
Okay, let's do it. What's my current record?
You know what? What did you get?
I was 2 for 3 last week. I am at 66 and 2/3% success. So I want to try to go 3 for 3 this week if I can. And by the way, everybody, Brian, we want them to play along at home. Is that correct?
That's right. And you know, I've kept these hidden from Pete, so he doesn't know what I'm about to ask him. He's hearing these for the first time. There's no cheating here on over under, and like Pete said, we want to encourage all of you to play along. So feel free to text in your answers as we try to guess over or under.
Oh, what's that?
I don't know.
It feels like I'm on. Yeah, it feels like I'm on Card Sharks again. So, no, Carp says he must have missed all the good parts. No, the first 30 minutes stunk. So actually, don't worry, we've just been rambling about Amazon and leadership. Can we finally just play a game, Brian?
Here we go.
All right,
Pete. This first one goes to leaders feeling comfortable acting on data and research in a timely manner. Okay. All right. So the CMO Council, that's Chief Marketing Officer Council, interviewed 150 marketing executives for a new report on consumer behavior. So what percentage of those marketing leaders admitted that it takes them too long to act on gathered data, research, and insights?
Is that out of 150?
No, I'm gonna set the over or under at 55%. So what percentage of the marketing leaders admitted they admit it takes them too long to act on data and research and insights?
All right. Well, I'm going to say
under 55%.
As we learned about last week, if it's full of men instead of women, it's going to be very high because men don't make decisions quickly. Boy, the entire crowd is saying over 55%. I'm going to say over as well. Tell me how many of these silly men or silly people are not acting on data.
Well, Pete, does it change your answer if I said that they admitted it takes them too long to act on these insights?
No, I will still take the over.
Okay, you're right.
Thank you, sir.
How about that? According to the report, 72% admit that it takes them too long to act on insights, possibly costing themselves business. And only 3% of marketers believe that they are exceptionally effective at turning data and intelligence into marketing action.
Sarge was tall. He had 70%. It is surprising. We spend so much time and money as leaders on data research and market analysis and data this so we can make the right decisions. And then we get the data and we sit on it.
Right.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Good one. Hey, you got another one?
Got another one. I got 2 more. Okay. So you got that one right. Here's another one for you. We all know that the coronavirus pandemic has caused a shift in our work paradigm. Ooh, there's a $10 word, paradigm.
Nice job.
Around the world. And many of us are adjusting to telecommuting or working remotely, right? That's what we're doing now.
Absolutely. We're both working from home.
So for many of us, it's our new normal, right?
Got it.
So Gartner, they are a corporate leadership consulting company. Gartner surveyed 317 CFOs.
If I may do a sidebar and get us into a topic that no one has anything what to do with. When I worked at Dixie Landing's, now Port Orleans Resort at Disney's Walt Disney World Resort, the Gartner Group back when they had a lot of money, always held their annual conferences at Disney, and they always had the overflow rooms at Dixie Landings and Port Orleans. So their conferences were always like at the Contemporary, and all the people who didn't book early had to stay at Port Dixie and take a bus to the Contemporary. They were real happy. They really enjoyed it. So go ahead. So Gartner Group. All right.
You got to act fast, right?
You better book your room, otherwise you're stuck at Port and Dixie, which, by the way, are beautiful resorts. Don't get me wrong. Loved working. Go ahead.
So anyway, Gartner surveyed 317 CFOs, chief financial officers.
Well done.
On how they are reacting to the changing working conditions and their plans for the future after the coronavirus. So here we go. What percentage of CFOs said that they now expect to make remote work and telecommuting more of a permanent arrangement once the COVID-19 crisis is over? Is it over or under? I'm going to set it at 49%.
You didn't even say the number people are quoting. No matter what you say. Okay, here's the word. The word permanent is what bothers me. Because if you did the statement that said, how many are considering the remote environment? How many are looking into it? But if you said how many people are thinking of making permanently work remote, I'm with most of the team. I'm going with under.
I don't have a sound effect for the answer was over.
Oh my word.
Interestingly enough, and this is why Gartner came out with this report and was really kind of pushing it, because I think it surprised everybody. The move to work remotely might actually be a little more permanent than many managers and employees realize.
Yes.
74% of CFOs interviewed, and again, there were 317 CFOs, 74% said that they expect to move previously on-site employees to a remote working situation after the COVID-19 crisis.
I think you're right. Tony says people are finding out a lot about doing business remotely and they like it. Don't forget, these are CFOs. I should have taken that into consideration. If a CFO of an organization can find a way to squeeze blood out of a nickel, they're going to do it. So,
right.
So they're like, wow, less office space, less this, less that.
Exactly.
We should all be into remote working. So whereas they're not taking into account the people who need the extroversion, who need to be around people, who need to do brainstorming and all of that. They're just looking at the financials. So
correct. They're saving money on real estate, basically.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. All right, nice job. Let's do one more, my friend.
All right, last one, and it's.
I'm sorry, I can't. Yeah.
I get caught up in the music, Pete. I love it. All right, this is the last one on Over Under. It's kind of related to our Zoom cybersecurity story. Kennett Research, do you have any stories about them?
I do not. They did not have a convention at the Walt Disney World Resort, so I've got nothing for them.
All right, well, Kennett Research recently surveyed decision makers at small and medium businesses across the U.S. So this is a wide survey of small and medium businesses here in the United States. What percentage of these decision makers at small and medium businesses listed cybersecurity as their lowest priority?
How many listed as their lowest priority?
Their lowest priority. Cybersecurity is my lowest priority. Again, small and medium businesses. We're not talking about Zoom and Amazon. We're talking about. I don't know. It was. Hold on. Hang on.
When was the article that you're looking
I know the answer to this, and it is. It was 2020. Here we go.
Give me the percentage.
What percentage of decision makers listed cybersecurity as their lowest priority? Is it over or under 15%? Over or
because
under?
Again, if this is before, this makes for great radio if I just keep doing this. All right, got a lot of overs, got some unders, got some. 15 is such a low number, and I'm trying to get into your head, Brian. These are people who are saying we don't care about cybersecurity. It's not important right now.
Correct. It's our lowest priority.
I'm going to go with Jill and everybody else. I'm going to go under, which is very freaky. I'm going to go under and try to finish 2 for 3, Brian. Come on.
I'm sorry, Pete. It's in fact 18%, which is still
which is still awful. Yeah, which is still awful.
And that attitude, according to this research, this article I read, that attitude seems to be informed by or driven by a certain amount of complacency on their part. 66% of those people believe that a cyber attack is unlikely to happen to them. So really only 34% think it's a risk at all. And then
this is typical poor leadership and management. We'll just ask for forgiveness instead of permission. I tend to live in that world. We'll just keep doing what we're doing until someone hacks us, and then we'll react. Then we'll figure out what to do.
I'll never get hacked.
Yeah, because I don't want to invest in a whole lot of money or anything on that, and then have nothing happen to us. Why would I do insurance for my organization? Hey, that was fun, Brian. I was 2 out of 3 again. For any of you who answered correctly, 3 out of 3, you get a free Leadership and Laugh T-shirts. It's on the way. Congratulations, in the mail to you. All right. So, hey, do you remember the show?
Hey, you were 1 out of 3.
Yeah. Oh, was I really? That's horrifying.
Calling you out, buddy.
Hey, do you remember, and I'm going to date myself here, back in the 70s, there was a TV show called Real People.
Yes,
and
with Sarah Purcell.
With Sarah Purcell, I think Skip Stevenson, maybe?
That's right.
It was like the first ever reality show, and the whole thing was, if you get on TV, we'll send you a Real People T-shirt. And you were like, well, I remember watching that with my family. It was like the first ever thing. Tradville says they never heard of that. Well, congratulations for being so young. All right, you know what it's time for, Brian?
What is it time for, Pete?
Time for the Daily Disney. Oh, man. I feel like what do you feel like right now, Brian?
Oh, man, I feel like I'm outside the tobacco shop on Main Street.
I am at Disneyland walking down. I see the castle. Is that a show going on in front of the castle right now?
There they are. There's Goofy. Oh, he's so funny.
Oh, my. There's Brer Bear with not a single person wanting to see him because no one knows who he is. Look at that. Look at him. Oh, the kids of the kingdom are dancing, Sherry says. Look at them. Wow. Everything at Disney is a show. Exactly. Kind of like this show, Garp. All right. So you all know me and Brian used to work at Disney. So we'd like to spend 5 minutes or so just sharing some Disney leadership lessons with you, some management things, and talk to you about how you can put them into your organization as well. Today, we're working off the Disney 4 quality standards, if you will. And today, we're going to talk about courtesy. Last week, what did we talk about, Brian?
Last week was safety.
Safety is always
courtesy,
safety.
Show and efficiency.
And efficiency. Skizzy. I don't know if that's right or not, but skizzy, if you will. So let's talk a little. I want you all to be thinking in terms of your organization. Now, if you're an entrepreneur or a solopreneur and you're listening in right now, think about the courtesy that you give to your people. If you work for an organization right now during this time, what happens there? So let me give you some real quick background from Disney about the whole idea of customer service and courtesy. I know my friend Carp is big into this. While safety is first, there's no doubt, Brian, that courtesy has to be the second most important thing. This whole idea of customer service and taking care of the guest and doing all these things and making magic and all, that's like a non-negotiable. Doesn't matter what role you're in at Disney. So some of the things we were taught when we were there, even if you were, think about this for a second, okay? A little child is walking through Adventureland or Frontierland in the Magic Kingdom and you see them spill their ice cream cone. Well, any cast member with a name tag on is supposed to run over to the current ice cream shop or to the outdoor food stand and say, hey, this child just dropped theirs. They spilled their soda. Please hand me another one. Everyone is trained. Okay, fine. Go ahead and just give it to another one and we'll make a note and all of that. You're even taught, though, Brian, on your days off, if I'm just a guest, if I'm there on my day off walking through Disney, and I walk over and I see something happening and there's no cast member around, I'm supposed to walk over to the ice cream little store or, if I have time to the outdoor food cart, if you will, and say, hey, I saw a little child drop their ice cream over there. I'm a cast member. I'm here on my off day. Can you give me another Ithaca doozy that I can give to that child? Now, I probably shouldn't tell you all that. I don't want you all walking up to the outdoor food cart at Disney and saying, "Hey, I'm a cast member. I saw someone drop something. Can you please give me one?" Because they probably they probably will. But that's the extent of just this idea of magical moments and taking five. Even when you're a guest in your own organization, you're still looking to take care of the customers. Brian, I mean, you had like the whole idea of courtesy and customer service drilled into you as well. Is that right?
I did, and it's funny that you bring up that it's a kadoozy. That is what. Explain to the people what it's a kadoozy is.
Oh, it's a very long 6-foot popsicle that has multiple colors to it, and it drips down your arm while you eat it, and it's absolutely delightful.
It's very sticky. It's not quite 6 feet, but
Yes.
we had that exact same thing happen to us as we had taken our kids to the Magic Kingdom, and I I mean, it's as if you ripped this out of my memories. I had the same thing where I thought, well, okay, this has been drilled into my head, right? That we are empowered to go ahead and fix the situation, right?
Right.
To implement that service recovery and
Right.
good guest service. So in my khaki shorts and Hard Rock Cafe T-shirt or whatever I was wearing, I walked right up and I said, "Hey, my name is Brian. I'm a cast member, and we just had a kid who lost their ice cream, and sure enough, they just reached in and gave me an ice cream."
And then you give it to somebody else. Yeah, absolutely.
No, I didn't give it to somebody else. I just
You took it. You just kept it. Well done. Give yourself a bell. Tony asked this. Tony says, "I've always wanted to know, were the cast members in the large costumes, i.e. Mickey Mouse, still required to smile when they took pictures with guests?" Well, as a former cast member with the chip still in my neck, Tony, I will answer it this way. There is nobody in the Mickey Mouse costume
correct.
because that is just Mickey Mouse.
What are you talking about?
I don't understand your question. It makes no sense to me at all. So
Character integrity.
Very questionable there. So something I want us all to think about as we're moving forward is customer service in the post-COVID-19 idea. And Disney's going to experience this, and all of our organizations are going to experience this idea of customer service, which is how close do people want to be these days? So think about all of your sporting events, Brian. Think about all of your airplanes. Think about your airports. Right now, if you go to an airport and you're waiting for an airplane, you're always looking for an empty seat to wait. I don't want to sit in between people because it's just human nature to have a space in between them. Is that going to get even worse? Are people going to, what does this look like? Will we go back to normal, Brian, as a society, and just will we come back to where it used to be, where we don't mind hugging and sitting close at a baseball game? Or think about all of the shows at Walt Disney World where we just pack people into the auditoriums and theaters. Will that continue? Or will Disney have to adjust the capacity? And if so, how does that affect revenue? How does that affect prices? How does that affect the amount of sales of souvenirs? What will the expectations be between safety, Brian, and courtesy?
You asked the question, will we go back? And I used to think so. I used to think that once this all blows over, we just stay inside and when it's all over, everything just goes back to normal. But as it goes on and as things change every day, as this whole situation unfolds, I really don't think that it will. I think we're, how they said after 9/11, like, well, everything changed on 9/11, right?
Right.
And it's going to be the same thing. It's a different world.
We have a short-term memory, I think, as Americans, maybe not across the world, but as Americans. And so, all this concept, well, let's take it back to just our Disney characters, Brian. Right now, every single child runs up and hugs a princess or Cinderella or Mickey Mouse, and they hug them. Well, will that now be either you can or can't hug the character? Because kids don't care. Kids want to give Mickey Mouse a hug. So now do we say, "I'm sorry, Mickey Mouse is not allowed to hug you anymore. Please give him a fist bump." And then he's got to get out a wipey afterwards to wipe his fist every single time. There's just a whole lot of things. And I think we have to wait and see how society reacts before we put procedures in place. There's been Bob Iger did an interview on this. My buddy John says right now his courtesy challenges are coming around tuition refunds, Brian, that most places are refunding, but they're not refunding tuition. And so people are doing lawsuits because they're not fulfilling their promises. So where's the customer perspective in higher ed when it comes to, yes, you're no longer getting your meal plan, so we'll refund that. You're no longer staying in the dorm, so we'll refund that. But we're not going to refund your tuition because you're still getting online education. You're still getting that. Well, that's not what I paid for. I paid for an in-person learning experience. That's, yeah. Brian, John would like the answer. Please go.
Yep. Good job, John. I think it's going to...
Yeah.
I think eventually the pressure will build up and they'll have to address those concerns. I think, a lot of industries or companies, they don't come out and just do the right thing the first time or, the second time, or just because everybody else is doing it. And if in fact the right thing is to refund, I don't know, Pete.
I know.
I'm still... distance learning is a thing, and you're still getting your education. You're getting it online. You're still going to get a degree that comes with the same amount of academic integrity behind it. I don't know.
Sean,
what do you deserve?
Well, Sean's got his son going to Mississippi State next year, and so he may have to take online courses and pay out-of-state tuition while sitting in his home in Ohio attending. Is that the same cost? I think what we got to think about here as leaders is, we don't want to make decisions for the 2%. 2%, 3%, 5% are going to complain about everything, and this is not right. But if you're 90% saying, education's education, online learning, then we need to build our policies around that and deal with the 5% as opposed to the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So yes, of course, let's now price online at 30% less than, I don't know. It's going to be tough. John, hang in there, buddy. Hopefully you're one of those leaders that is in higher ed that's kind of helping to drive these decisions. So again, be ahead of the curve as a leader. Start thinking about this now, because you can't just wait for, stuff is going to come, but have a plan A and a plan B ready to go. Brian, couple quick notes. We're already at 54. Yes, that's no, John. We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. So we're going to open the phone lines for what we call the caller cattle call. So anything you want to talk about today. We talked about what, Brian? Disney courtesy. We talked about toilet paper.
We talked about cybersecurity. We talked about airlines and travel.
We talked about the airlines and travel, right? We talked about Amazon. We need at least one phone call. This show will not end without. So while we're waiting for one person to call in and give us their take on anything leadership today, I will let you know, Brian, that our over/under was 30 attendees for the day, and we had 36 people.
Hey!
Let's go. 36 people. That's 36 people with nothing better to do this morning than have us on in the background.
It's only going to get better from here, folks.
How bad is your life that this is what you're doing right now? Okay, come on. And once again, someone call, please. My wife, call. Anybody, call. We have to test the system and make sure. Carp, you always got something witty to say. Let's go. I need
It's a cattle call right here.
Here we go. I got someone named JJ coming on in to share her thoughts on leadership. JJ, go ahead. You're on the air. Hello?
Nope, not on the air.
Can you hear me?
Yay! Who's this?
It's Jilly Jill.
Hey, Jilly Jill. What's your take on leadership or all these things we're talking about today?
So here's my question for you. I'm late to the party this morning because I had a board meeting for the Boys and Girls Club. I'm on their board here in our town. My question to you guys is, we are supposed to have a gala, our major fundraiser, coming up, and we're debating on auction items. Do we go to small businesses and ask them to donate auction items at this time, or do we respectfully say, hey, we're not going to do an auction, even though we're supposed to be doing one?
Great question. Is the desire to not do it because it's a silent auction and you don't want people walking around touching pens and signing up for things? Or is it more of a, hey, we know times are bad right now, so we feel bad asking you for things when your revenues are down?
Correct. I think it's a horrible idea, personally.
It's a
I
horrible
think what
idea.
you need to do is probably go to a lot of your hospitals and healthcare centers and ask them if they can donate some masks or ventilators.
Brian, give yourself a bell. All right. So here's the question, Jilly Jill. Is community service part of your overarching culture, and are you doing it with the community in mind? And again, if I'm a small business, there's two ways I'm going to take you asking for an auction items. One is, well, of course we're going to support the Boys and Girls Club. We've been a proud supporter for the past 50 years. We're always involved in the auction. Why would you even think not to ask us? Even when times are tough, we can at least do X, Y, Z. Your other audience is going to be, how dumb do you have to be to ask us to give you something for an auction during this time? So if you know that you've got supporters out there who have been doing it for 10, 20, and they're just, maybe you know that they're a little stronger in their finances, maybe you could ask them, but I'd be careful with the ones you just asked last year and maybe have only done it for a year or two. I don't know. Travis just said, as a restaurant owner, we're still donating what we can for the community, you know?
Right, and we're seeing that locally here in Denver as well. On the radio, there are some companies that are still doing well during this pandemic, and they're ready to give back to the community and really try to make things better for instance, like you said, the Boys and Girls Club, etc. Because those type of organizations, they need that funding as well. It's hard.
Right. Jill, when do you have to have this decision made by?
Our event is going to go virtual on May 12th. So
Okay.
We're kind of doing like a Jerry Lewis telethon, if you will,
Okay.
on Facebook and all of our media.
He passed away, so you can't do that exactly.
Right.
Yeah, he won't be able to be there.
He'll be there with spirit.
There
I
you
wish
go.
I could do a Jerry Lewis. Brian, can you do one? That's not
No, I cannot.
Jill, hey, you make the best decision you possibly can. Look at all the options and call back and let us know what you decided. I'd love to hear what happened. Now, again, here's a few more comments that I'm seeing. It's a perfect opportunity to talk to your donors to donate what they would have gifted in an auction by just explaining to them, to donate some things. A restaurant owner says they're still donating what they can for the community. Katie has something in the comments of something called HandBid, HANDBID is an online auction service. Boys and Girls Club still need, the Boys and Girls Club needs their funding to exist. People who work in nonprofits still need help. So the last thing you want is for Boys and Girls Club to go away. So when you go and ask for donations and they say no, and you say, okay, well, I guess we'll put all these kids out on the street with no leadership. Great job. Thanks for helping our future. Now, don't say it that way, but you know what? you know what I'm talking about. So
take Pete's advice. Don't take his words.
And do the I don't know. I'm looking forward to hearing what you do. Good luck. Good luck, Jill.
Thanks,
Thank you
guys.
for calling. Thanks for calling. Thanks,
Jill.
for listening. Brian, go ahead and send her a Leadership and Laugh t-shirt.
All right. She can auction it off. We'll even autograph it for you.
Brian, we're already over our time, so let's close with Did You Know?
Did you know? Did you know? Do I have music for Did You Know?
No.
All right, here we go. This is Did You Know is a fun fact on leadership, and then we're going to sign off. But we're going to go back real quick to these companies that were the small and medium businesses that we mentioned before. That they've become kind of complacent to the risk of cybersecurity. And earlier we said that the percentage of decision makers at small and medium businesses believed that a cyber attack is a realistic possibility for them was really pretty low. But
Okay.
Did you know, Pete?
Did you know?
That's copyrighted. Hashtag
know.
not a sponsor. Not a sponsor. Did you know that according to the same research, this is the same research, 67% of small and medium businesses were actually hit with a cyber attack of one kind or another in 2019. So even though they don't think it's going to happen,
Nice.
more than 2/3 actually were hit with some level of cyber attack in 2019. And with that,
Less than 18% think it's important. 60% or more have been hit with it. And Brian, I think that comes to the end of episode 2 of Leadership and Laughs. How'd we do, Brian?
fair to middling. We had a lot of fun, and I think we had a lot of laughs.
we had some fun. We learned about leadership. We had some laughs, and we're doing this every Wednesday. Thanks to all the new listeners we had out there. Thanks to all of you, all of our friends for listening in. And we'll do it again. Hopefully this is the best part of your week because it's tough out there. And that's all from Alabama.
And Denver up here in the Mile High. Thank you for joining us on Leadership and Laughs with Pete and Brian.
See you next time, everybody.